The first time my husband asked me to pay rent for living in our own house, I laughed because I thought he was joking. He wasn't. My name is Sarah Mitchell. I was 36 years old, married for 7 years, and living in a quiet coastal neighborhood in Santa Barbara, California. From the outside, our life looked comfortable. A nice house, 2 cars. Weekend dinners with friends. A husband who worked in finance and always seemed to know exactly what he was doing with money. That was the problem. I trusted him with everything. When Mark told me it made sense for him to handle the bills, I agreed. When he said I should leave my stressful corporate job and work part-time from home, I believed he was trying to protect me. And when he told me 3 years into our marriage that I needed to contribute more because the mortgage was becoming too much pressure, I believed that too. It started as a simple conversation over breakfast. Mark placed a printed spreadsheet beside my coffee and said, "I don't want this to feel unfair, but if you're living here, you should help cover the house." I looked at the numbers. $2,800 a month. He nodded. That's less than half the mortgage. I frowned. But we're married. He sighed like I was being childish. Marriage doesn't mean one person carries everything. That sentence made me feel guilty, so I agreed. Every month, I transferred the money to the account he gave me. He called it our housing account. For 5 years, I paid it without question. I skipped vacations. I stopped buying things for myself. I took extra design clients at night just to make sure I never missed a payment. Mark praised me when I paid on time. He became cold when I was late. Slowly, without realizing it, I became a tenant in my own marriage. The letter arrived on a Tuesday morning. Mark was at work, and I was sorting through mail when I saw an envelope from Pacific Union Bank. I almost threw it into his office pile, but something made me open it. Inside was a notice addressed to Mark, thanking him for requesting archived property records. The second page listed our home address. The third page made my hands go cold. It showed the mortgage had been paid in full 7 years earlier. 7 years. Before our wedding. Before the spreadsheet. Before every monthly transfer. I read the line again and again, waiting for it to change. It didn't. That house had never had a mortgage during our marriage. I sat at the kitchen table with the letter in my hand, while the life I thought I understood started falling apart. Then my phone buzzed. It was a message from Mark. "Don't forget rent is due Friday." I didn't answer Mark's message. Instead, I drove straight to Pacific Union Bank with the letter folded inside my purse. The branch manager was a woman named Karen Alvarez, and when I placed the documents on her desk, she looked at them for less than a minute before her expression changed. "Mrs. Mitchell," she said carefully, "what exactly are you trying to confirm?" I swallowed hard. "My husband told me we've been paying a mortgage for years." Karen looked back at the screen. "There is no active mortgage on this property." My chest tightened. "Are you sure?" She nodded. "The loan was paid off in full 7 years ago." I stared at her. "Before we got married, yes." She turned the monitor slightly so I could see the record. "Your husband's parents transferred the final payoff amount before the wedding. The title remained in his name, but the debt was cleared." I sat there completely still. For 5 years, I had sent Mark nearly $3,000 a month because he told me we were surviving together. I had apologized when I paid late. I had felt ashamed when I couldn't afford gifts. I had believed I was helping save our home. Karen lowered her voice. "Is your name on the property?" I shook my head. "I don't think so." She checked another document. "It is not." That hurt, but it didn't shock me. Mark had always said adding my name would create tax complications. I had believed him because I had no reason not to. Karen printed a copy of the payoff confirmation and slid it toward me. "I can't give legal advice, but you may want to speak with an attorney." I nodded, unable to speak. On the drive home, I thought about every month I had struggled. Every time Mark looked disappointed because I couldn't pay exactly on time. Every time he reminded me that I was lucky he didn't charge more. When I got home, the house felt different. The white walls, the marble counters, the ocean view from the living room, everything looked less like a home and more like evidence. I walked into Mark's office, something I almost never did, and opened the bottom drawer of his desk. It was locked. For the first time, that lock didn't feel private. It felt suspicious. I went upstairs, found the spare key he kept in his nightstand, and opened it. Inside was a folder labeled Housing Account. My name was written across the first page. Beneath it was a printed list of every payment I had made. At the bottom was the total, $173,600. I stared at the number until my vision blurred. $173,600. That was not a mistake. That was not a misunderstanding. That was 5 years of my work, my stress, my canceled plans, and my guilt sitting neatly inside my husband's locked drawer. I took pictures of every page before putting the folder back exactly where I found it. Then I opened my laptop and searched my own bank records. The transfers were all there. Same date every month. Same account number. Same label, house payment. I had typed those words myself because Mark told me to. The account name was not our housing account. It was not even a joint account. It belonged to M. Mitchell Personal Holdings. That evening, Mark came home cheerful. He kissed my cheek, placed his briefcase on the counter, and asked what was for dinner. I wanted to scream. Instead, I smiled, chicken. He didn't notice anything different. Men like Mark rarely notice silence when they are used to obedience. During dinner, he talked about work, complained about traffic, and reminded me again that rent was due Friday. I know, I said. He smiled, good. I don't like having to remind you. I looked down at my plate. Where does the money go? He paused for half a second. What? The rent. Where does it go? He took a sip of wine. Mortgage, taxes, maintenance. You know this. But what account? His eyes narrowed slightly. Why are you asking? I shrugged. Just trying to understand our finances better. His smile returned, but it looked forced. Don't worry about it. That's why you have me. That sentence stayed in my head all night. That's why you have me. Not as a partner. Not as a husband. As a gatekeeper. The next morning, I called a forensic accountant named Rebecca Lane, someone I had once hired for a design client who was going through a business dispute. She agreed to meet me that afternoon. I brought bank statements, screenshots, and the payoff letter. Rebecca reviewed everything in silence. Then she looked up and said, Sarah, this isn't rent. My stomach tightened. Then what is it? She turned the statement toward me and pointed to the account. This is personal income he created from you. I stared at the paper. Can we trace where it went? Rebecca nodded, yes. Then she clicked into the first report and frowned. But I don't think you're going to like what we find. Rebecca worked fast. Within 48 hours, she had traced 3 years of transfers. The money didn't sit in Mark's account for long, it moved. Some went to investment platforms. Some went to luxury retailers. Some went to travel bookings I had never seen. I sat across from Rebecca as she built a timeline on her screen. This payment came from you on March 1st, she said. 3 days later, $8,000 went to a jewelry store in Beverly Hills. I frowned. Mark never bought me jewelry from Beverly Hills. Rebecca didn't answer. She clicked another file. In June, your transfer came in. 2 days later, $4,000 went to a spa resort in Palm Springs. I felt my stomach drop. I wasn't in Palm Springs. She shook her head, I know. By the time she finished, the picture was clear enough to hurt. My money had not been paying for a home. It had been funding another life, hotels, dinners, jewelry. Weekend trips. Designer stores. A luxury apartment deposit in Los Angeles. Rebecca printed the report and placed it in front of me. Do you recognize the name Lauren Hayes? I stopped breathing for a second. I knew that name. Lauren worked at Mark's firm. She was younger than me, polished, always smiling, and Mark had once described her as too ambitious for her own good. I had met her twice at company events. Both times she acted overly friendly. Both times Mark watched her when he thought I wasn't looking. Rebecca showed me a transfer note attached to one payment, for Elle. I drove home slowly that night. Not because I was afraid to face Mark, but because I needed time to become calm enough not to ruin everything too early. When I arrived, he was in the living room on a call. His voice changed the moment he saw me. "I'll call you back," he said quickly. I set my purse down. "Who was that?" He smiled. "Work." I nodded. "Lauren." The smile vanished for a second, then returned. "Why would you ask that?" I looked at him for a long moment. "No reason." He walked closer and studied my face. "You're acting strange." I smiled. "Am I?" He didn't answer. That night after he fell asleep, I checked his phone. I already knew the password. He had never thought I would look. The most recent message from Lauren was still open. "Did she pay this month yet?" I read the message 3 times before I understood the full cruelty of it. Lauren knew. She wasn't just the woman receiving gifts. She knew where the money came from. I scrolled carefully, taking pictures of every message with my phone. Mark had joked about me, called me naive, said I was easy to manage. In one message, Lauren asked if I ever questioned the rent. Mark replied, "Sarah trusts me too much." That's her best and worst quality. I sat on the edge of the bed beside my sleeping husband and felt something inside me finally switch off. Not break, not explode, just switch off. Love can survive arguments, distance, even pain. It cannot survive contempt. The next morning, I made breakfast like nothing had happened. Mark looked relaxed again. "Rent tomorrow," he said while buttering toast. "Don't forget." I smiled. "Already scheduled." He leaned over and kissed my forehead. "That's my girl." I almost laughed. After he left, I packed a suitcase, then another, then 3 more. I took my documents, my clothes, my laptop, my grandmother's necklace, and the framed photographs that still meant something to me. I left everything else. The furniture he liked. The dishes his mother chose. The paintings Lauren probably complimented at parties. By noon, my belongings were in a storage unit. By 1, I was in my attorney's office. His name was David Mercer, and when he finished reading Rebecca's report, he removed his glasses and said, "Your husband is going to regret this." David explained the situation clearly. The house was in Mark's name, but the money he had taken from me under false pretenses could become part of a fraud claim in the divorce. There was also the postnuptial agreement Mark had insisted we sign 2 years earlier, when he claimed it was necessary for tax protection. I had never fully understood it. Mark probably assumed I still didn't. David pulled up a copy and smiled slightly. "Interesting." I looked at him. "What?" He turned the screen toward me. "This agreement says that if either spouse uses deception to extract personal funds from the other, the injured spouse may claim reimbursement, legal fees, and a share of marital asset appreciation." I stared at him. "Mark wrote that." "His lawyer did." David leaned back. I'm guessing he never thought it would apply to him. At that exact moment, my phone buzzed with a message from Mark. "Rent didn't arrive, fix it." I didn't reply. For the first time in 5 years, I let Friday pass without sending Mark a single dollar. He texted again at noon. Then at 2. Then 4. By 6, the messages changed from annoyed to angry. "Sarah, this isn't funny." Then, "You don't get to live here for free." Then, "Answer me." I was sitting in a hotel room near the beach, watching the sun go down through the window. My suitcase stood beside the bed. The folder with every document sat on the nightstand. I felt strangely calm. Mark had spent years teaching me that silence meant control, He was about to learn silence could also mean freedom. At 7:30 he called. I let it ring. At 8 he called again. Then came the voicemail. His voice was sharp. I don't know what kind of attitude this is, but you need to come home and act like an adult. I listened once, saved it, and sent it to David. 20 minutes later, Mark called again, but this time his voice was different. Sarah. Where are your things? I closed my eyes. He had finally noticed. You're home. I asked. Where are you? Safe. Silence. What does that mean? It means I'm not coming back tonight. He laughed once, but it sounded nervous. Because of rent. Are you serious? I looked at Rebecca's report on the bed. No, Mark. Because of where the rent went. The line went completely quiet. When he finally spoke, his voice was lower. What have you been doing? I smiled sadly. Not what did I do? Not what did you find? His first thought was that I had stepped out of line. I found the payoff letter, I said. I found the housing account. I found Lauren. He said nothing. I found everything. For 10 seconds, there was only breathing on the line. Then he said, you went through my private records. That was when I knew he still didn't understand. You stole $173,000 from your wife, I said calmly. And your concern is privacy. He snapped, I didn't steal anything. You agreed to contribute to a mortgage that didn't exist. He fell silent again. Then I heard a woman whisper in the background, Lauren. My hand tightened around the phone. Mark quickly said, I can explain. I looked out at the dark ocean and answered, good. Explain it to my lawyer. The divorce papers were served to Mark at his office on Monday morning. David made sure Lauren was there to see it. Mark called me 17 times before lunch. I didn't answer. By afternoon, his attorney contacted mine, claiming everything had been a misunderstanding. David sent back the bank records, the messages, the payoff confirmation, the false rent spreadsheet, and the postnuptial agreement Mark himself had signed. The call stopped for exactly 1 hour. Then Mark left another voicemail, and this time his voice was shaking. Sarah. Please don't do this. We can settle privately. He finally sounded afraid. Not sorry, afraid. The first mediation session took place 2 weeks later. Mark looked thinner, paler, and furious in a way he was trying to hide. His attorney spoke first. Mr. Mitchell acknowledges communication errors regarding household finances. David almost smiled. Communication errors. He opened the folder and slid the first document across the table. Your client created fake housing costs, charged his wife nearly $3,000 a month, and spent the money on another woman. Mark clenched his jaw. It wasn't like that. I looked at him for the first time. Then what was it like? He opened his mouth, but no answer came. David continued. The reimbursement claim is $173,600, plus legal fees, plus the asset appreciation clause in the postnuptial agreement. Mark's attorney looked at him sharply. What postnuptial agreement? Mark's face went blank. That was the moment I realized he had never read it either. He had signed it because he believed every legal document protected him. He never imagined one could protect me. David placed the agreement on the table. Your client required Sarah to sign this 2 years ago. Fortunately, it applies very clearly. Mark grabbed the document and flipped through the pages. The color slowly left his face. This can't be right. David pointed to the signature line. That's your signature. Mark looked at me, Sarah. His voice softened. We were married. You can't treat me like a criminal. I stared at the man who had charged me rent for a paid-off house and spent my money on another woman. I didn't treat you like a criminal, I said. You acted like one. His attorney whispered something to him. Mark closed his eyes. He knew the fight was over before it really began. Then David slid one final paper across the table. There is also the matter of the house. Mark frowned. What about the house? David looked at me, then back at him. You used Sarah's extracted funds to renovate and increase the value of the property. He tapped the agreement. Under your own contract, she has a claim to that increase. 4 months later, the divorce was final. Mark reimbursed most of the money through a settlement, paid my legal fees, and was forced to sell the house to cover what remained. Lauren disappeared from his life the moment the money did. That part didn't surprise me. People who help spend stolen comfort rarely stay for the consequences. At the final hearing, Mark tried to speak to me in the hallway. Sarah, he said quietly, I know I hurt you. I looked at him calmly. You didn't just hurt me. You studied what I trusted and used it against me. His eyes filled with tears. I loved you. I shook my head, no. You loved what I allowed you to take. There was nothing more to say after that. I moved into a smaller apartment near the water. It didn't have marble counters or a perfect ocean view, but every dollar that paid for it was mine, and every room felt honest. I rebuilt slowly. I took more design clients. I opened a small studio. I learned how to read every contract, every statement, every document with my own eyes. The first month after the divorce, I woke up panicked almost every morning, still expecting someone to ask what I owed them. By the third month, I started sleeping through the night. By the sixth, I realized I had gone an entire day without thinking about Mark. That felt better than revenge. A year after I opened the bank letter, I framed it and placed it in the bottom drawer of my new desk. Not because I wanted to remember the pain, but because I wanted to remember the moment the truth arrived in an envelope I almost threw away. That letter cost me my marriage, but it gave me back my life. Sometimes people ask how I could have missed the truth for so long. The answer is simple. I trusted the person I married. That was not my shame. That was his. The rent I paid wasn't the biggest loss. The biggest loss was believing someone who never deserved my trust. But the best thing I gained was worth more than every dollar he took. I gained the ability to look around my own home, breathe freely, and know that no one there was lying to me anymore. The end.